Hi, I'm Teresa and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my third episode of my series Sapphic Reads, and you can find the other videos linked down in the description below. And this series is one I created just so I can bring attention to these Sapphic books I am reading and promote them and give them all the love and attention they deserve. And yes, so let's just get started with the video. The first book I read was an arc of Girl, Serpent, Thorne by Melissa Bashardoust. So this is a high fantasy inspired by Persian myths, and it is in own voices. And you have got a bisexual main character called Soraya, and she is cursed to be poisonous to the touch, and she discovers there may be a way to break her curse. To do so, she befriends a guard, and I can't remember his name, but Azad. And she befriends a guard called Azad. She also befriends the Div. Befriends isn't quite the right word, but she encounters the Div, which is a kind of demon-ish person thing that's currently living in her palace's dungeons. And basically, with both of their help, she's trying to break her curse and become herself. And they both end up becoming love interests, so you've got a bit of a bisexual love triangle, which I do enjoy. And basically, I just adored Parvati, who is the Div. She's kind of moth-like in appearance. She's got moth wings, and I just she's fab, basically. And I just loved her relationship with Soraya, the kind of understanding they had with each other as both being monster girls, really, and both being a bit morally grey and such. And it was just so, the relationship was enchanting, some of the scenes, and just the whole book was very, very rich, and it was just really, really gorgeous and well written, and I really, really enjoyed it and really, really recommend it. The next book I read is possibly the most well-known Sapphic book. I finally picked it up, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this book follows a young journalist who is interviewing this old starlet called Evelyn Hugo, who was really big in the 50s and kind of following decades. And Evelyn Hugo's, she's so well known. I'd call her like the Marilyn Monroe of this kind of world. She's this really well known public figure, and so much is known about her, but really not much is. And she's kind of now deciding that now that she's like 80, she's deciding she's going to tell her life story, the complete truth, and the truth behind her having 7 husbands. And this book, it broke my heart. I was in tears the last 100 pages or so, and it's one of those ones where you know that it's not gonna have a happy ending, but still, it still has you just going. This book is sapphic because we discover that Evelyn Hugo didn't just have 7 husbands, she also had a relationship with a woman. And just this that plot and that relationship and those characters, they were just gorgeous. I loved them so much together, and it was messy, and it wasn't perfect, but it was its own brand of perfect, and I just really enjoyed it, and it just made me very, very emotional. And of her 7 husbands, I liked one, and his name is Harry Cameron. I love so much. So the book's kind of divided into the sections of each husband and that portion of Evelyn's life. And so it's like, that's gullible McReva. And you've also got my favourite, brilliant, kind-hearted, tortured Harry Cameron. Poor Harry. But it's just got this old Hollywood glamour, but also the darkness and the grittiness underneath, and it's so good. Next up was possibly the second most well-known sapphic book, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagan. So this is the first in a trilogy. The third book's not out yet, and I'm worried I'm gonna have to wait for it. And this is Set in an Asian-inspired fantasy, I think, heavily influenced by Malaysia and the author's own culture and her background in history. And this follows a main character called Lei, who is part of the paper caste. The society is separated into 3 castes. And you've got paper, which is human. You've got moon, which is this kind of humanoid but with animal features, like the bull king. He's got his bull nose, his hooves, his whatever else. And in between caste, kind of, which would be the steel caste. So the paper caste is kind of treated like dirt. And every year there are 8 girls chosen of the paper caste to serve the king. And Lei ends up being chosen as the 9th because she's so well known for having these gorgeous golden eyes. And this book follows her in that role, and there are themes of sexual assault, and they are handled very, very, very sensitively. The author herself is a sexual assault survivor, and it was very important to her. She's got a wee letter at the front to depict it in a sensitive way, and I've not been affected by that, thankfully, so I can't say, it's perfect representation or whatever, but from the way it read to me, and I've not heard anything negative about it, I think it's handled very well. And it is sapphic because Lei ends up having a bit of a crush on one of the other girls, and maybe it's reciprocated, and maybe they're glorious together, and oh, I just love them a lot. They're both just so good together, they just get each other, and I just, so good together. I understand why Sasha never shuts the fuck up about this book because it's so good. So yes, I am very, very excited to get my hands on the sequel and then wait and torture because I know it ends in a cliffhanger and the next book won't be out till next year. And Lei is just such a good main character. I do not understand the people that hate her, they are just wrong. She sorry if you do, but like, did we read the same book? She's rebellious and she's stubborn and she's just very, very human, I thought, and she's just so easy to sympathize with, and I just really, really loved her. The next book I read was an arc of Cinderella's Dead by Callan Bayron. I'm very upset that I wasn't a big fan of this, but it's one that I want to talk about and one that I want to hype up and recommend, so I'm including it in this video. And I know that so many other people have loved it, so don't take my word on it. It's just one that didn't work for me. So this book is set 200 years after the death of Cinderella in the society that's kind of been formed around her fairy tale, and well, it's a true story there. And this society is incredibly misogynistic, and there's a very steep divide between the ruling class and the kind of nobility and their wealth, and just the lower class just living in poverty. But every year, all the girls of a certain age are forced to go to a ball at the palace where they're expected to be picked by a suitor to be taken as a bride, much like Cinderella was. And for your main character, Sophia, this is the worst. She doesn't want this at all. She's very rebellious. She's just not a fan at all of this society, and she really just wants out. She particularly wants out with her girlfriend. She just wants them to run away together to escape, even though there's very little hope. But this doesn't go to plan. Her girlfriend's not such a big fan of the whole possible death thing, so she goes along with it, and Sophia later ends up meeting Constance, who's the last living descendant of Cinderella's stepsisters. Together, the two of them kind of go about finding out the truth of Cinderella's story and trying to find ways to continue Constance's family's work and to take down the society and the king. I really loved the way it played with stories and fairy tales and the kind of truth of them and their stereotypical characters, and I thought it was very, very clever, and I just love so much about this whole premise. And I don't want to be mentioning the negative things and to put people off, because I don't want to do that in this type of video, but I did mention them a bit in my wrap up and in my Goodreads review, which will be linked down below if you are interested. But even with all of that I didn't enjoy, it is still something I very, very much do want to encourage people to pick up. You've got black lesbians taking down the patriarchy. Yes, please. I'm very upset that it didn't work for me, but I hope it works for so many other people. The next book I read was also an ARC, and that is Seven Devils by Elizabeth May and Laura Lamb. This is the first in a duology, and it's sci-fi, it's very feminist, it's very queer, and it's also, taking down the corrupt empire. And this book, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I admittedly requested it, not realizing that it was adult sci-fi, which I struggle with YA sci-fi. Adult was a bit too far, but no, I really, really did enjoy this. And I love the queer rep it had. You had sapphics, and you had a trans woman, and you had an ace character in your kind of main group of characters. So this is told in multiple perspective. You've got 5 point of view characters, and the next book there's gonna be 7. Fuck, I don't know how the authors are doing that. I admire them for it, but oh wow. So in this book you have got Eris, who joined the resistance, and she's a big fan of doing the missions other people don't want to do and doing the difficult missions. And it's a not very well known fact that she, and by not very well known I mean no one knows it, it's a big secret, but that she was previously the heir to this horrible, ruthless empire, and she won her role as heir by murdering 50 of her brothers, basically. 49 of her brothers. And, it's ruthless. She's known for being so ruthless. And so when Chloe, another character, found out about that earlier on, before the book started, she wasn't half impressed, and they went from friends to enemies to not speaking. But Chloe is also part of the resistance, and she's mechanic. She's a big fan of just sitting fiddling with engines and stuff and not getting into the difficult things and the killing and all that. And they are sent together on a mission to board a ship from the Empire and get some intelligence and get right back out again, because there's a heavily guarded ship with an unknown substance on it, and obviously the resistance wants to know what's going on. So they get to the ship, and everything going to plan, sort of, until they discover 3 fugitives on the ship who have already commandeered it. And it ends up in a bit of a clusterfuck, to be honest, but it was a good clusterfuck. It turns out well, because you get to meet these 3 fugitives. You've got Ariadne, who's only 16 or so, and she is incredibly smart, tech genius, and she's been essentially running the AI that controls the Empire. So yeah, you've got Rhea, who was a courtesan in the Empire, and this is not a pleasant role, but she's just the loveliest little sweetheart. You've got Nyx, who was previously a soldier of the Empire, though through the AI, no one gets a choice, basically. And she's been deprogrammed and escaped with the other 2. They all come together in an effort to save the galaxy, and it's just this kind of ragtag group of misfits going into this lovely found family, and just these lovely team dynamics. The characters in this book are so good, and they're also very unique and individual, which I think is very difficult for a 5-person cast of point of view characters. And I just, wow. But yes, I found this book just so well fleshed out. I love the world building, I love the plot, I just loved so much about it, especially the sapphic romance that we get between Chloe and Rhea. That's not a spoiler, I don't think. The authors have mentioned it on Twitter and that, so I'm taking that as you can mention it if you want. And they're just so soft together and so sweet. So yes, I really did enjoy that a lot more than I expected, and I very much recommend it. It's definitely got like Star Wars and Guardians of the Galaxy vibes, but better. So much better. The final book I want to mention is In the Role of Brie Hutchins by Nicole Melleby. I finished this morning. It's got my little tabs. I got excited reading it. This was an ARC sent to me through Melia, which deals with US books in the UK, and it's an advanced copy, but I think it's already out. It was delayed by COVID and such. and this is a queer middle grade following your main character called Brie, who is part of quite a religious family and she attends a Catholic school. And Brie adores soap operas and she'd really love to get into acting and such. She thinks she's 13 in this book, she's quite young. One night she's looking up her favourite actress and inappropriate pictures of her come up. Turns out she's done maybe a naked photo shoot, and her mum walks in, and so that her mum doesn't see what's on her laptop screen, Brie blurts out that she's going to be crowning Mary in the service that they have in May. I don't know anything about Christianity, sorry. But her mum's over the moon, it distracts her, but the issue is Brie's not crowning her, no one is as of yet. It's not been decided and it won't be for a couple months. So this sets Brie on a path of trying to figure out what to do and how to make sure that she ends up being the one crowning Mary when she's a bit of an average student, and it's the top student that gets to do it. Well, not top student, but the student with the best essay. So there's that, and it's her after seeing those pictures and maybe having some feelings on a girl, figuring out her feelings, and oh, it made me so emotional. So I would say she's only ever had feelings for girls, so I think she'd be maybe figuring out she's a lesbian, though of course she may later on have feelings for boys. So much about this book and just her relationship with her family and her friends, and it really hit hard, especially her mum, who didn't really deal with things very well. It wasn't it was that kind of I'm just going to ignore the problem response, and how horrible that can feel to be on the other end of it. And I don't know, it just made me very, very emotional. And I think it's just something special about it. Should we go through my tabs just for fun? She accidentally, or sort of comes out to her best friend and they're at school and her friend has to leave to go sit down in her class, but she texts her a rainbow and a thumbs up emoji, and I was like in tears. So I've got that tabbed. But I mean, supportive best friends, that's what you need. And oh no, this is too late on, I think that's spoilery, but it's a lot of her conversation with her mum later on, and it's just very honest and heartbreaking and very, very real, and it just had me in my feelings. And the final one is just a quote from her friend, and it just really hit me as quite accurate. I wanted to save it. So her friend says, "I hope you and your mom are okay. I always just figured if your parents weren't bigots or whatever, like if they didn't disown you or throw you out, things were okay. I didn't realize it'd be so hard for you." And I think that's very accurate. We kind of forget that just because we've not had this terrible reaction doesn't mean everything's good. You want a happy reaction, and if you don't get that acceptance and stuff, it hurts. This book is just, I'm very happy it exists, and and it's got me really excited to read more queer middle grade. There's a few books I've been wanting to pick up, such as Alex Gino's books. So yes, I think I shall soon, because this book was very short but had me very emotional. So yes, that's an extra book for my sapphic reads to make up for it being quite similar to my wrap up. And I hope you have enjoyed this and you've got some new sapphic book recommendations. And yes, thank you so much for watching and for supporting this series. They're my most viewed videos, and that just makes me so happy. I'm so glad that people want to know about sapphic books and want to get excited with me about them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon.